Hey Deckers, it's time for an update in the most played Steam Deck games for September with our monthly chart update. If you like the stats that you see in the videos, then check out our SDG Companion App on the iOS and Android app stores. Okay, let's dive in then. At number 20, we have Vampire Survivors down 3, a time survival game with minimalistic gameplay and roguelike elements. Hell is empty, the devils are here, and there's no place to run or hide. All you can do is survive as long as you can until death inevitably puts an end to your struggles. Perfect 90 frames per second on the Steam Deck OLED or 60 on the LCD, pushing only around 8 watts, giving you a good 5 hours gameplay. At number 19, we have Elden Ring down 11 places. Embark on a perilous journey to become the Elden Lord by exploring vast landscapes, battling powerful foes, and uncovering deep lore set in the mysterious lands between, ruled by demigods. Only expect around 30 to 40 frames per second on this one with medium to high graphic settings. Not that it makes a huge amount of difference what settings you run this on, but 30 is still more than good enough to play on this one. It does push over 22 watts though, even on the Steam Deck OLED, so only expect around 2 to 2.5 hours gameplay at best. At number 18, down 4 places, we have Hogwarts Legacy. Embark on a journey through familiar and new locations as you explore and discover magical beasts, customize your character and craft potions, master spellcrafting, upgrade your talents and become the wizard you want to be. Make allies, battle dark wizards and ultimately decide the fate of the wizarding world. Still quite hard to run in a lot of places, especially inside Hogwarts and Hogsmeade, the town, but expect around 40 to 50 frames per second, absolutely looking gorgeous in the outside world, but with big dips around the 30 mark when we are running through the corridors of Hogwarts. At number 17, up 3 places, is Helldivers 2. Enlist in the Helldivers and join the fight for freedom across hostile galaxies in a fast, frantic and ferocious third-person shooter. How you deliver liberty is your choice. You'll have access to a wider range of explosive firepower, life-saving armor and battle-changing stratagems, the jewel in every Helldivers arsenal. Expect okay performance between 30 and 40 frames per second for the most part at medium settings with the mid tiers, but if you go into the expert tiers then expect only 30 frames per second at best. At 16, dropping 6 places, is Red Dead Redemption 2. Arthur Morgan and the Vandalin gang are outlaws on the run, with federal agents and bounty hunters trying to track them down. The gang must rob, steal and fight their way across the rugged heartland of America in order to survive. Absolutely gorgeous looking game, especially on the Steam Deck OLED, although it does push over 22 watts, meaning it only around 3 hours gameplay at best. But you can push 40 to 60 frames per second depending on your settings, but only expect around 30 to 40 if you want it to look decent. Dropping 3 places to number 15 is Slay the Spire. Whenever you embark on a journey, the layout differs every time up the spire. Discover hundreds of cards to add to your deck with each attempt at climbing, and make sure to select cards that work together efficiently to dispatch your foes and reach the top, especially with the weekly challenges, which keeps everybody coming back. Perfect 60 frames per second on either the LCD or OLED as it is capped and less than 7 watts, giving you a good 3 or 4 hours on the LCD and about 6 to 8 on the Steam Deck OLED. Dropping a massive 7 places to number 14, we have Brotato. A spaceship from Potato World crashed onto an alien planet with the sole survivor, Brotato, the only potato capable of handling 6 weapons at a time, waiting to be rescued by his mates, meaning he has to survive as long as he can in this hostile environment. Pushes an easy 90 on the Steam Deck OLED and 60 on the LCD, or 120 if you hook it up to an external monitor, and only around 7 watts again, meaning a good 5 to 8 hours gameplay on the Steam Deck OLED and 4 to 5 on the Steam Deck LCD. At number 13, dropping 2 places, is The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. One of the most frustrating little roguelites that you can play on the Steam Deck, but also one of the most efficient. The Binding of Isaac is a randomly generated action RPG shooter with heavy roguelike elements. Following Isaac on his journey, players must find bizarre treasures that change Isaac's form, giving him superhuman abilities, enabling him to fight off droves of mysterious creatures, discover secrets, and fight his way to safety. At under 7 watts, again, you're going to manage around 7 to 8 hours on the Steam Deck OLED and about 4 or 5 on the LCD. Dropping a massive 9 places to number 12 is Peak, a co-op climbing game where the slightest mistake can spell your doom. Either play solo or as a group of lost nature scouts, with your only hope of rescue from a mysterious island is to scale the mountain in the center, help each other up ledges, or place ropes and climbing spikes to make the way easier for those that come after. Can run at 60 frames per second unless you look at the gorgeous environments around the outer edges, but surprisingly pushes over 20 watts, meaning only around 2 to 3 hours gameplay on the Steam Deck OLED and around an hour and a half on the LCD. Dropping back down 7 places to number 11 is Cyberpunk 2077. Play as V, a mercenary in Night City who comes into possession of a biochip containing the consciousness of Johnny Silverhand, a legendary rocker and terrorist, sending you on a crazy adventure fueled by your own survival before your consciousness is erased. The latest DLC definitely pulled me back into this with the free update, but we don't get a huge performance boost, meaning in and around Dogtown 30 to 40 frames per second is still the best, but once we go into Dogtown, 30 frames per second driving around is still a bit of an issue, and pushing over 22 watts, we only get around 3 to 4 hours gameplay at best on the Steam Deck OLED and around 2 hours on the LCD.
Today I'm going to talk to you about the smallest, most powerful little power banks on the market. These are the INIU P50, also available in white and yellow, as well as the blue, green and black that you see here. And believe it or not, this tiny little thing has 2 USB-C and 1 USB-A, and it's a 45 watt, 10,000 milliamp hour battery. And then you can see just how small it is compared to its 25,000 milliamp big brother, but this also has the integrated USB-C cable so that you can very easily and quickly get to charge. Steam Deck wise, it'll only manage around 30 to 60% of a charge depending on your model of Steam Deck, but perfect for slipping into the pocket for that power on the go, and so cute that my wife and kids have already stolen all of these. So if you're looking for some awesome power on the go that fits in your pocket, then check out the links in the description below.
At number 10, jumping up a massive 9 places, is the original Hades. As the immortal prince of the underworld, you'll wield the powers and mythic weapons of Olympus to break free from the clutches of the god of the dead himself, while growing stronger and unraveling more of the story with each unique escape attempt. Running at a perfect 90 on the Steam Deck OLED and 60 on the LCD, with around 15 watts usage, expect around 3 to 4 hours gameplay on the OLED and about 2 to 3 on the Steam Deck LCD. Holding on just about in the top 10, dropping 4 places to number 9 is Balatro. Blending classic poker mechanics with strategic roguelike elements, making each run unique and unpredictable, earn enough chips to beat the devious blinds, all while uncovering hidden bonus hands and decks as you progress. Even though it's a card game, it does push just over 8 watts, but means a good 5 to 8 hours of gameplay still on the Steam Deck OLED and around 4 to 5 on the LCD, at a solid 60 on the LCD and 90 FPS on the OLED. Massive re-entry into the chart this month with Deep Rock Galactic Survivor at number 8. Kill bugs, upgrade your gear, and delve ever deeper into the lethal caves of Hoxas. Collect and assemble a devastating array of guns, unleash hell upon wave after wave of alien monsters in fast and frantic combat. Tunnel your way through the cave walls to collect precious riches on the way. Running at a pretty stable 60 plus frames per second on the Steam Deck OLED, but pushing over 22 watts, giving only around 2 or 3 hours gameplay. You are going to want to play with your settings to get a good balance with this one, especially on the Steam Deck LCD. Dropping 1 place to number 7, but running a hell of a lot better on the Steam Deck now thanks to the dedicated Linux update, is Baldur's Gate 3. Caught in a conflict between devils, deities and sinister otherworldly forces, you'll determine the fate of the Forgotten Realms as the corruption inside you grows, as well as your power. Definitely more than playable even in Act 3 through the Baldur's Gate City and Rivington, so this is a monumental update for the game and finally deserving of its verified status and place in the most played charts. At number 6, a massive new entry of Megabonk, a roguelike survival game where you must fight your way through hordes of enemies and bosses in randomly generated maps. Grab loot on the way, level up your character and upgrade your weapons to survive as long as you can. One of the most interesting of the bullet heaven roguelites, as it definitely has a lot of aspects of the better roguelites out there, with some massive improvements along the way. 90 frames per second, pretty much solid until you can no longer see everything on your screen on the Steam Deck OLED, and pushing it around 11 watts, giving us a good 5 hours gameplay. It's definitely easy to see why it's so popular. The lowest it's been for a while, dropping 3 places to number 5, is Stardew Valley. After inheriting your grandfather's old farm plot, armed with hand-me-down tools, you set out to begin your new life in this sleepy town. Can you learn to live off the land and turn these overgrown fields into a thriving home? Certainly has been the staple for a lot of people, as it pushes only 6 watts on the Steam Deck, giving a good 8 hours plus on the Steam Deck OLED at 60 frames per second and about 5 to 6 hours on the LCD. Thanks to the Voyager's update, No Man's Sky has jetted back up to number 4 by 5 places. It's definitely running better than we've seen before. In No Man's Sky, every star is the light of a distant sun, each orbited by planets filled with life, and you can go visit any one of them you choose. Fly smoothly from space to planetary surfaces with no loading screens and no limits. In an infinitely procedurally generated universe, you can discover places and creatures that no players have ever seen before. As you can see with the Voyager's update, we can now push 60 to 70 frames per second on the Steam Deck OLED with the original settings, and only around 15 watts, meaning a good 3 to 4 hours gameplay as well. Up a massive 13 places to number 3 is Hades 2. As the immortal princess of the underworld, you'll explore a bigger, deeper mythic world, vanquishing the forces of the Titan of Time with the full might of Olympus behind you. In a sweeping story that continually unfolds through your every setback and accomplishment, and believe me, there will be many of them. Pushing around 11 watts, giving a good 4 to 6 hours gameplay on the Steam Deck OLED at a easy 90 frames per second, and 60 frames per second on the LCD will give you around 3 to 4 hours gameplay as well. At number 2, dropping 1 spot from last month, people are definitely replaying Hollow Knight. A classically styled 2D action-adventure across a vast interconnected world. Explore twisting caverns, ancient cities and deadly wastes, battle tainted creatures and befriend bizarre bugs, all while solving mysteries at the kingdom's heart. Running absolutely perfectly on the Steam Deck LCD or OLED, and can even push over 240 frames per second if you let it, but you will want to cap those frames if you want a stable experience, and to bring that wattage down, capping it around 60 frames per second will get you around 4 to 5 hours gameplay on the Steam Deck OLED. At number 1 though, a massive new entry, as we predicted last month, of Hollow Knight Silksong. As the lethal hunter Hornet, adventure through a kingdom ruled by Silk and Song. Captured and taken to this unfamiliar world, prepared to battle mighty foes and solve ancient mysteries as you ascend on a deadly pilgrimage to the kingdom's peak. As you can see, capping this at 120 frames per second, it still only gives you less than 9 watts usage, so capping it at 90 on the Steam Deck OLED will give you an easy 5 to 8 hours gameplay, and around 4 to 5 on the Steam Deck LCD. Let us know in the comments below which of these games you've been playing this month, or if it's not in the charts, what have you been playing? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.